I still gotta wonder why. I never seen a man cry till I seen.
Man, I love the way it sounds. It's unreal. I think deep, I believe in ghosts. Ever felt the hand of a dead body?
Once considered a delinquent, Scarface rose to become a Southern hip-hop icon. From a beggar with nothing but a burning desire, he took control of his life and made a fortune from his singing voice. A fairy tale from the streets to the mainstream, everyone thought he had achieved everything. But the truth behind the glory is a bitter curse, a nightmare no one dares to face. Fame is not a gift, but a cruel price that Scarface had to pay. Being exploited mercilessly through exploitative contracts, forced to perform to the point of hospitalization, being slapped in the face in front of the music director, and becoming a puppet in an inhumane entertainment industry. What he endured was more terrible than any prisoner. Is the price of greatness worth it? Can he find freedom again? Or will he forever be a ghost in the music industry? Left behind in a cruel game he never wanted to play. The truth will quickly be revealed, and the horrifying secrets will make you question everything you thought you knew about him. One from refugee to hip-hop icon, Scarface's talent and dedication are something anyone in the industry has to admire. What he achieved is not just the story of a talented person, but a journey of overcoming countless challenges by someone who was once despised and considered a criminal due to socioeconomic consequences, simply because he started as a refugee. Scarface, or Brad Jordan, arrived in the United States in 1980 during the Mariel boatlift migration wave, an exodus that brought thousands of Cubans, including him, from their country in search of a new chance at survival. For Scarface, America was not a promised land, but a foreign land, where he had nothing but a yearning heart. The life of a refugee was a real battle for survival for him. Refugees like him, always underestimated and easily detected and deported at any time. This feeling is like a shadow haunting him, making him live in constant fear that he could lose everything in an instant. In this new society, Scarface has no family, no money, no connections, and no protection whatsoever. All he had was a dream, a burning desire for his name to be known one day. But it's a dream that very few people believe in. In the eyes of many, Scarface is just a homeless person, a part of the asylum problem this country can't control. He was seen as a criminal due to the country's economic consequences, a person with no value beyond his background. But Scarface wouldn't give in. He never allowed himself to fall into despair. Difficulties came upon him not only materially, but also spiritually. No one can help Scarface, no one but himself. In poverty, he constantly wondered if a better future was possible. Can my dreams come true? But his mind and resilience wouldn't allow him to stop. Each small job, each penny earned gradually gave wings to big dreams. In the midst of poverty and uncertainty, Scarface honed his resilience to overcome all difficulties. It was during those difficult months that Scarface ingrained in his mind that nothing is impossible if you don't give up. Not only did Scarface overcome adversity, but he also used his rap talent to build his reputation. He not only raps about street life, but also incorporates stories of refugee survival into his music, offering a fresh perspective on the lives and emotions of people like him. Rap for Scarface is not just music, but the voice of struggle. Each song, each lyric he wrote is a heartfelt confession, a story about life never being easy and people who never give up. The contempt from his peers who once considered rap an inferior choice only made Scarface more determined than ever. It was those very words of ridicule that ignited a powerful motivation within him, that one day they would have to see him differently. Each of his rap verses is not just lyrics, but a challenge to those who have scorned him. And finally, Scarface proved that his dream was not just a fantasy, but a reality that everyone had to acknowledge. By the time The Diary 1994 was released, Scarface was no longer just a Southern rapper, but a true hip-hop star. This album solidifies Scarface's position not only in the South, but also across the entire international hip-hop landscape. Songs like I Seen a Man Die and Mind Playing Tricks on Me not only made Scarface famous, but also served as inspiration for anyone who has faced adversity in life. This album not only helped Scarface overcome societal barriers, but also solidified his status as not just a rapper, but a great storyteller in the hip-hop world. Scarface's career didn't stop there. Upon releasing The Fix 2002, he collaborated with major names like Jay-Z, Nas, and Beanie Sigel. This collaboration not only helped Scarface expand his influence, but also solidified his position as an international artist. These names helped him break free from limitations from the South to the world, and continue to elevate Scarface's status in the music industry. But that's not enough. In the entertainment industry, where glamour is fleeting, Scarface received so much he had to give back the same amount. The more famous he became, the more he felt constrained by invisible chains. The freedom he once craved was something he had to trade for everything. Is the price of fame worth this immeasurable loss? 2. A life full of sorrow. Scarface, one of the greatest rappers in Southern hip-hop. But looking at him from another angle, he looks like a stoic, middle-aged man. Perhaps his childhood, those days of wandering in poverty, begging and busking, made him sensitive to everything around him. From a refugee with nothing but a desire to rise, Scarface overcame countless hardships to reach the pinnacle of his career. But even though he stood at the peak of glory, he still couldn't find satisfaction in his heart because of one important thing he couldn't deny. The coldness of the music industry had made him abandon himself. As someone who has dedicated his life to music, Scarface knows that when you reach the top, the price you pay for fame will never be free. The deeper Scarface delved into music, the more he felt he was sabotaging his own career. And this not only harmed him, but also left him exhausted and depleted. In the early days, when Scarface was still a young refugee full of dreams, music was the only path that could help him escape poverty and find freedom. But the longer he stayed in the industry, the more famous he became, the more trapped he felt. Music, which should have been a place where he found freedom and self-affirmation, was now just a burden, a tool being exploited. Scarface not only had to face financial difficulties and exhaustion from non-stop tours, but he also had to endure the injustice of the very music industry he had dedicated his life to. He revealed that black artists, especially those like him, are never treated fairly in the industry. The money he received was always much lower than other artists, and his performances were often the last choice. Once Scarface got into a fight with a record executive because the executive looked down on him simply because he was a person of color. Scarface couldn't bear the contempt, and he bluntly declared that he would never cooperate with any unit associated with that director. Poor contracts over exploitation and a feeling of being abandoned made Scarface unable to endure any longer, and he decided to retire from the music career he had dedicated himself to. But the story doesn't end there. After retiring from the music industry, Scarface faced another serious legal issue. He was briefly imprisoned for not paying child support. That was the final blow, a trade-off too great for him to bear any longer. The industry he loved and dedicated himself to did not respect him. This only fueled the disappointment in Scarface. He no longer felt he could find satisfaction in himself. The music industry, while bringing him fame and glory, was also the thief of his freedom, a freedom he had sought his entire life. Scarface gave up his music career not because he lacked passion or talent, but because he couldn't live in a system that had abandoned him. After all he had contributed, he could no longer be a part of the industry that had once exploited his talent. From a refugee with nothing, Scarface rose to become one of the greatest rappers. But the price to pay is too high. The music industry took away from him everything he had desired: freedom, recognition, and ultimately belief in what he had contributed. Scarface's feelings of anger and frustration are not difficult to sense. A person who fought with all their might, who dedicated their heart and soul, yet was ultimately cast aside cruelly, without a shred of compassion. How could someone like Scarface not feel angry when the music industry itself exploited him, turning music into a tool for making money and abandoning him when he was no longer needed? The tragedy of Scarface is that he is recognized by the whole world, but he cannot find respect and fairness within the very industry to which he dedicated his youth. 3. Milestone achievements and stormy waves in a career. When mentioning Scarface, one cannot help but think of the great achievements he accomplished throughout his career. Not only because of hit songs like Guess Who's Back with Jay-Z or In Cold Blood with Nas, but also because this was a milestone that helped Scarface establish himself as a pioneer in bringing Southern music to the world. However, alongside his successful career, Scarface also had to struggle with himself in his personal life. The pressure from fame and the complexities of family relationships are a significant challenge. The constant failures of marriages, romantic relationships, and family have made it impossible for him to find balance in his life. Scarface once shared that after every success, he felt like he lost a part of his personal life. Loneliness is not something that is easily faced, no matter how many stage lights there are outside or how much praise comes from fans. The image of the great artist gradually became that of a lonely man, forced to fight not only against the industry, but also against his own inner pain. Additionally, health issues are also an unavoidable factor in Scarface's life. Years of struggle not only with the music industry, but also with diabetes and other health issues made it difficult for him to easily continue his beloved work. Despite his talent and fame, Scarface still had to pay the price with his own health. The physical pain is something no one sees behind the glamorous photos or dazzling performances. Therefore, Scarface not only fought to maintain his reputation, but also to survive and stay healthy, a battle no less arduous. And although Scarface had it all, talent, success, and a solid position in the music industry, things weren't all fun and happiness. Success, when achieved in abundance, gradually becomes a burden. The relentless waves of adversity forced Scarface to grapple with himself. He had to rediscover the value of life and the meaning of music in a world where what we want to do is sometimes not what we can control. That is a tragedy not only in music, but also in life. While the great milestones in Scarface's career propelled him to the top, the personal challenges were something fans rarely saw. Behind every hit song, every performance is someone battling themselves to maintain a balance between work and life. Unrelenting hardship has become an inseparable part of his journey, making each step forward for Scarface not just a victory in music, but also a victory in life. Looking back at Scarface's journey from a poor refugee to a great hip-hop icon, we can't help but feel sympathy and respect. Scarface not only fought against adversity to achieve success, but also faced profound challenges in his personal life and health. It was precisely those difficulties that made his journey truly great, because no one can survive in such a harsh industry without paying a price. But perhaps that sacrifice is what created the Scarface legend we still admire today. 4. Absolute silence. While everyone thought Scarface was just resting in reality, he was facing a fierce internal struggle that no one knew about. After reaching the pinnacle of glory, where music stage lights and public adoration were the rewards for years of tireless work, Scarface suddenly disappeared from the public eye. No longer the passionate performances, no longer the boisterous interviews, he chose to retreat into the shadows, not due to a lack of talent or an absence of an audience, but for a deeper reason: mental exhaustion and a feeling of being abandoned by the very industry he had dedicated his life to. Why did Scarface decide to retreat? It wasn't because he lost his passion or felt he no longer had a place in music, but because the very things that had drawn him into the spotlight made him feel suffocated and unable to breathe. Once a great icon and a pioneer of Southern hip-hop, Scarface now feels drained not by a lack of audience or music, but by a lack of respect and recognition from within the industry itself. His image, once a role model for those who loved authenticity and depth in music, is now gradually fading. He felt as though he was an outsider in the very field where he had built his career. When Scarface began to disappear, rumors spread that he was simply resting after a long period of non-stop work. But in reality, his disappearance was not an easy decision. Absolute silence was not a voluntary choice, but a raging storm within him. The feeling of having no voice, of no one remembering his name after so many years of dedication to music, caused Scarface to stop, not because he no longer loved rap, but because he no longer felt happy in what he was doing. All the expectations from the audience, from the industry, and from himself have now become a burden that is difficult to bear. The tragedy of being forgotten is what hurts Scarface the most. Although he still has a loyal fan base who remember him, the name Scarface is becoming increasingly obscure in the music industry. New artists, young names, and new musical trends have taken over the market, causing the name Scarface to gradually fade into obscurity. He who was once a leader in the rap world is now just a name in the memories of those who grew up with his music. Feeling forgotten among young names and the constant changes in the music industry was a major psychological shock for someone like Scarface, who was once at the peak but is now just a shadow of his former self. The journey from impoverished refugee to musical icon was not easy, and when he achieved everything he had always craved, recognition, the spotlight, and fame, it became a burden. Fans still hold him in high regard and remember him, but in the ever-changing world of hip-hop, the new generation doesn't recognize Scarface's value the way they do other names. It was this very forgetfulness that pushed him into a shadow realm where he had to struggle to find himself again. Scarface couldn't bear the loneliness that the spotlight brought. Most importantly, he realized that fame had cost him the most important things in life: freedom, inner peace, and genuine relationships. Mental fatigue and a feeling of being used in the music industry made it impossible for him to continue spreading his wings. He was no longer the winner in the game he once dominated. Instead, he felt like an object discarded after it was no longer useful. Looking back, Scarface's greatest tragedy was being silenced at his peak. With the talent, influence, and legacy he left behind, no one can deny the greatness of Scarface. However, the injustice in the music industry, where there is no place for older artists, pushed him into obscurity, even though he was still one of the people who shaped and created the music that many people loved. The feeling of Scarface is like a punch to the soul. When you give everything you have, you can't imagine that one day you'll be erased in the public eye. Oblivion is the punishment Scarface must bear in an industry that has no place for old legends. More than anything, Scarface painfully realizes that no matter how high he climbs, silence and abandonment are the price to pay for glory. And for someone like him, who once had everything but lost it all, that's a bitter tragedy that few in the industry can understand. 5. Fan sentiment and reactions. Despite being absent for a long time, Scarface remains a name that evokes memories of the golden age of Southern hip-hop. For those who have followed his career from the early days, Scarface is not just an artist, but also a symbol of rising above adversity, representing an entire generation that lived and breathed that music. His songs, the stories he told through rap, are still deeply ingrained in the minds of his loyal fans. However, perhaps the biggest fans of Scarface are those who witnessed his greatness during his peak years. Although Scarface no longer appears on big stages or releases new albums, his loyal fan base remains unchanged. They still remember and love the songs Scarface sang, the stories he shared. But what complicates things is the next generation. With the strong growth of hip-hop and the emergence of new music genres, the name Scarface is gradually fading in the eyes of young audiences. Today's younger generation no longer knows him as part of hip-hop history, but can only hear about him through stories from previous generations. The generational divide has created a noticeable gap, leaving older fans feeling lost when they see Scarface no longer a prominent name in the public eye. This makes those who loved him from the beginning feel like they are losing a precious part of their memory. However, even as time passes and music changes constantly, the contributions and values that Scarface left behind remain indelible. He wasn't just a rapper, but a storyteller whose every word touched the hearts of listeners. He was an icon of an era when his songs reflected the hardships and struggles of a generation. That's why even though he no longer appears on stage or releases new music, Scarface still holds a special place in the hearts of his fans. They still remember him, and they still find the story of Scarface inspiring. This shows that his value is not forgotten in the hearts of those who loved his music. So the question is, can Scarface return? The music market has changed a lot recently. Rap, especially hip-hop, is no longer a separate world. Today it has become a global force with names like Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and J. Cole. These new artists can easily reach young audiences and connect with them through social media platforms, something Scarface didn't have back then. Today's younger generation doesn't know much about him, nor do they fully understand the profound impact Scarface had in the 90s, a time when the American South officially emerged into the world of hip-hop. So could Scarface return and make a new splash? This is a difficult question, especially since the music market today is always welcoming new faces and new styles. However, for those who have loved Scarface's music, the answer is clear. Scarface could still make a comeback, but can he find his place in a music market that has changed so rapidly? The old fans are still waiting, still hoping, But they know that Scarface's comeback is not just about reappearing on stage. It's about rediscovering his own music, about re-exploring the profound values he once brought. What makes old fans feel regret and nostalgia is the fact that Scarface is no longer a prominent name in the music industry. They witnessed his incredible journey from a refugee with nothing to becoming a Southern hip-hop icon, but now he's out of the public eye. This inevitably led them to wonder whether the name Scarface truly no longer held a place in the hearts of music lovers, or if there was any chance for his name to shine once more. Can the music of Scarface adapt to the new market without losing its essence? These questions, though unanswered, still remind people of Scarface, of a glorious era when music was not just entertainment, but a powerful tool for telling stories about life. A sense of regret and longing washes over you when you look back at Scarface's journey, because he was not only an artist, but an integral part of the Southern hip-hop story and the global rap music family. Although he is no longer widely present, Scarface lives on in the hearts of music lovers as a part of history. A legend that has never been forgotten, even though his name may fade in the eyes of the modern public. 6. Is a fleeting light worth more than a life of oblivion? Looking back at Scarface's journey, one can't help but reflect on the price he paid for fame. The greatness Scarface achieved is undeniable. From a refugee with nothing but dreams, he became a Southern hip-hop icon, one of the greatest rappers, and helped put Southern music on the world map. But is that fleeting light really worth the price? To achieve glory, Scarface sacrificed his freedom, traded privacy, and became part of the music system he once loved, but now felt possessed by. When you look at what Scarface achieved, it's impossible not to feel a little regret. His aura, once a beacon for young people, is now gradually fading, leaving behind little more than an unfinished story. He had everything: money, fame, and the admiration of millions of fans. But it was those very things that made Scarface pay too high a price. Although he rose from adversity from a poor refugee, as the spotlight dimmed, Scarface faced silence in music, feeling abandoned by an industry he once trusted. Forgetfulness in the music industry is not uncommon. This industry is known for only celebrating new stars and pushing aside old legends. With icons like Scarface, they pay too high a price to stay relevant. After rising to the top and conquering the heights, the daily fatigue, the feeling of being exploited by the music industry, and the loneliness within the spotlight left Scarface feeling out of place. When he looked back, his former fans only remembered him as a distant memory, and no one mentioned his name in conversations about hip-hop anymore. We ask ourselves, will Scarface be remembered as a great legend? Or will he forever remain an unfinished story? A name forgotten in the tide of time? The answer isn't easy. Scarface was once a symbol of rising from poverty, someone who brought Southern hip-hop to new heights. However, his very hopes and dreams became a shackle when the music he loved became a burden, a prison within contracts and rules he no longer wanted to be a part of. Looking at the brevity of the career and the price paid, one cannot help but feel a conflict of emotions. The light of Scarface shone for a long time, but as that flame began to fade, no one could help but feel regret. Can he truly adapt to a world of music that changes so quickly and is so quick to forget legends when they are no longer the center of attention? It seems Scarface couldn't bear the betrayals and lack of freedom that this industry brought. He didn't just leave music for health or inspiration, but because the price of fame was too high a cost he no longer wanted to pay. The tragedy of Scarface is that he reached the top, but that peak became a double-edged sword. While he dedicated himself entirely to music, the music industry had no place for him once he was no longer the brightest star. Is it possible that, like a legend, Scarface paid an unimaginable price for fame and ultimately had to accept oblivion when that light faded? We might wonder if Scarface regrets his decision to retire from the music scene, considering that music remains his closest friend and an untold story in his heart. But the important question is, was what he achieved worth the price he paid? Could that glory compensate for the loneliness and loss of freedom he had to trade? The answer will probably remain open forever. Scarface is a legend, but also an unfinished tragedy, because even though he reached the pinnacle of success, he couldn't escape the price of fame. Is that greatness worth the loss in the life of an artist like him? Each person can offer their own answer.
Sometimes,
But one thing is
Scarface once
certain,
said, Scarface had
Scarface's
always
journey
preached
has
loyalty
been
and
always
integrity
will
in his
be
lyrics. To be called a
story that
snitch
is not
under that
easy, full of
legacy,
challenges, and with a tragic ending that no one in the music industry can forget.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.